My name's GuyKes. I've been a professional bike and kit tester for over 25 years, and this is my long-term review of Hope's XCR XC trail brake. So the basic stats are you've got a unique carbon fibre bladed lever, pulling a modified X2 caliper with titanium hardware and an alloy-backed pad set, which brings in a front brake without rotor under 200 grams, so it's a seriously light brake, but with plenty of power and loads of modulation, plus all Hope's usual hand-built in Lancashire goodness, apart from the brake levers which they bring in. But apart from that, all beautifully machined in-house in Barwick. So that's the basic stats. Now let's go through the detail up close and personal, and I'll talk through about my experience about using them for over 2 years now. And I have to say, spoiler alert, it's been pretty much entirely positive. So this XCR lever is unique to the brake. All the other brakes in the Hope lineup use an inline design, whereas this XCR is a radial. So as you can see, the carbon lever blade is perpendicular to the reservoir body there. Typically for Hope, it's all beautifully CNC machined there. You've got that laser etched logo in top. You can get those in different colours as well. But the main brake comes in either this polished raw aluminium or an all black finish as well. And while the clamp on the back looks relatively chunky, it's actually massively machined out inside, and that's part of the way they get the weight down really, really low. And if we go over to the shifter side, you can see it's got a bolt-on matchmaker there. That's for a SRAM shifter setup, but you can also get one for Shimano as well. And that gives you a detail of the back of the lever there. Like I say, this really curved lever, it's not actually made in-house by Hope. They do have a carbon fibre making facility, but these are the only element of the brake that's bought in from outside. Everything else, well, the pads and the hoses are, but all the metalwork is made in-house in Barwick, and it's assembled in-house in the factory as well. So in terms of adjustability, you've got reach adjust, but you've got no bite point adjust. As you can see on these, that's the bite point, so it's relatively close to the bar already, and then there's a little bit of flex in the body as it pulls in, but nothing like as much as, say, a Magura lightweight brake. And braking feel, I mean, kind of varies. I've had them, these have always been quite pokey off the start, but then very linear throughout the stroke. Whereas I've heard other reviewers say they're not as bitey. I mean, they're not as bitey as Shimano, but they're quite linear all the way through. Certainly enough control to really modulate, even if you're running something as slippery as a Specialized Renegade up front. You know, they really are designed as an XC brake, and well, we're going to look at the caliper in detail in a minute. Going down here, you can see I've been using the 160mm rotor. So that's a specific lightweight, thinner rotor, and it's a very light rotor as well. That actually comes in just over 100 grams. So together with the brake, that's a 300 gram-ish front setup, which is way lighter than sort of 180mm rotors from Hope, which come in about 145 grams. But that's pretty much par for the course. But you've still got this floating rotor centre, but the spider on that's thinner as well, so the whole thing's been cut away. And then, just because it's easy to see, we'll go and look at the rear caliper. It's basically the single-piece X2 caliper, but with some extra sort of lightweight refinement. You've got titanium bolts on there, and the pads inside have an aluminium backing as well. So you're just shaving a few grams out there as well. And overall, that makes it a really, really lightweight brake. Like I say, 100 grams, like I say, 200 grams for the front brake, about 215 for the rear, just because you've got a longer hose on it. And that makes it lighter than Shimano XTR. It makes it lighter than SRAM Level Ultimate, which are both around sort of 230 gram mark. Slightly heavier than a Magura MT8. It's the only brake that really, really shades it on weight is a Trick Stuff pickler. But then, while these are relatively expensive at 250 quid, That's nothing compared to the Piccolo, which are €1,100 a piece. So you're going to really have to get rid of those extra 50 grams. And obviously, with it being a Hope product, you're getting fantastic servicing in-house from the factory and at most events as well, most major mountain bike events. The Hope support truck will turn up to and sort you out on the spot. And, you know, that with brakes, that's a real godsend. They've certainly saved me at a couple of events when I've turned up with brakes that I haven't properly bled. But these relatively simple bleed. It uses the standard sort of Hope. What you do is you take that reservoir cover off. I mean, obviously flip it up horizontal first, take the reservoir cover off, and it's just a basic gravity bleed on it. The port, it's not like the SRAM one where it bleeds from the far side of the piston, so it needs a little bit of jiggling about, but the port just goes, you know, the syringe just goes on there. There's a little bit of angle adjustment on the olive there, so that helps it align in terms of sort of coming in and out on the caliper, although, as you can see, there's no rotational adjustment. It doesn't rotate in line, so there's a bit of a curve on that pipe there, so a little bit more finicky to adjust there. But because it's a twin pot rather than a 4-piston, it's easier to align against the rotor. And again, just got another view there of that much slimmer alloy spider and the slimmer braking track as well. And then you've got these rivets in here, which means that and then you've got these rivets in here, which means that the whole disc rotor can expand slightly with heat and without causing any warping or wobble. Lever feel pretty linear. You have to squeeze it a little bit more than a progressive brake to get the power at the end of the stroke, but certainly enough with the 160mm rotor on for XC work. You probably want to go to a 180 if you're using it more as a trail brake. And to be honest, what I'd really like to see is this lever teamed with the E4 caliper, so the 4-pot caliper, because that normally comes with a 50 gram heavier lever with bike point adjust as well, but it's a much more agricultural inline lever. So I do keep going on to Hope about this. I'd really like to see a DCR with these levers, but the more bite of the 4-pot caliper. But for what they're intended for, which is cross-country lightweight trail, these brakes are absolutely spot on. And, you know, you've got that extra support and reliability through Hope as well. In terms of how they've performed over the last 2 years, I've used them for everything from, you know, XC racing through to gravel riding and just, well, everything I've done on this chisel. They've been on this bike pretty much since the start. The only issue I ever had was I got heat fade on a very, very long descent in Snowdonia while I was bike packing on the Trails Uri, but that was a long drag brake descent, and it's just not what these brakes are designed for. And so they kind of faded and started pumping out a bit on that, which I've not had a brake in a long time, but like I say, definitely outside of the remit of these brakes. And apart from that, the only other thing is they can squeal in the wet. Not sure if it's something to do with the aluminium backing plate or the sintered pads that come as standard, but they can get a bit vocal when they get damp. But on the plus side, the pads last a really, really long time and you get consistent bite in all weathers. The only other slight thing I've noticed recently is this lever's getting a little bit slower on return, which probably just means it's got a dirty piston in the rear caliper compared to this front one, which is still very quick and snappy return. But you're even getting a bearing for the lever pivot there, just to keep everything super smooth. And I say absolutely rock solid. There's no wobble or rattle in there, which is often the case with lightweight levers. And that's even after my mate Ryan had a bit of a lie down using this brake at the Struggle Borderlands. But yeah, maybe actually that might be something to do with why that was a bit sticky. But anyway, yeah, apart from that, being absolutely bomb-proof, as you kind of grown to expect from Hope. And then just for reference, this is the Tech 4 lever. So as you can see, a much chunkier lever overall. Well, to be fair, actually, the lever body isn't that much different. It's mostly that big alloy lever on there with the two adjusters for reach and bite point that's adding the weight. And also there's a roller cam in there to sort of
help with the leverage, whereas this, as you can see, is very much direct application of power straight into that master cylinder there. But actually the light's catching that machining really, really nicely. And yeah, just, I mean, you've always got to factor that in with Hope, as well as that backup, just the level of sort of machine quality and the fact, you know, all their swarf and everything's recycled and they do everything as sustainably as possible. And if you're patriotic, you know, obviously having a British brake is a bit of a blue passport win, I guess.
So yeah, after over 2 years using these brakes, it's very much a big thumbs up from me if you're looking for a very, very reliable cross-country lightweight trail brake and don't mind a little bit of squeal in the wet. I think that's the only real downside on them. But apart from that, cracking set of brakes. So, massive thanks to Hope for letting me test the brakes for so long. Big thanks to my channel supporters. That's Eurocycling UK, PT's Products, Enduro Bearings, Torque Nutrition, Crud XL Fenders, and Hebtro Clothing. And massive thanks, as always, to my Patreon supporters who pledge a monthly amount to the channel, which really helps with the support and sustainability. It means I can spend more time talking to you guys about bike stuff on the GoPro alongside my other review work for Bike Perfect and other websites. So if you really like what I'm doing here, then please consider joining my supporters on Patreon. But otherwise, subscribe, click for notifications if you haven't already. Give this review a thumbs up so YouTube know you enjoyed it, and tell your mates about the channel as well, because your recommendation of word of mouth is by far the best way for the channel to grow. But for now, thanks for watching. I've been GuyKes on GuyKes TV, rattling on about Hope's lightweight XC brake, the XCR.